Welcome back to the channel and to this third video in the series, The Real History of Football, Sheffield, the Home of Football. The first two videos were made walking around the area of Sheffield where organised association football first developed anywhere in the world, which is just south of the centre of Sheffield, mainly around the area where the Bramwell Lane Stadium now sits. Today we've gone about 4 miles west of Sheffield Centre to the edge of the Peak District Hills to find some more out about Sheffield's vast football heritage. Again, we will walk and talk, and this time I want to focus on Hallam FC, the club who are officially the second oldest association football club in the world. But again, they do have that title challenged by not just misinformed YouTubers, but also by more senior entities like the English FA. Once again, we do have to discuss Cambridge University, who claim to be older than both Sheffield FC and Hallam. We also need to discuss another club, Cray Wanderers, who some historians have also claimed was founded and active before Hallam. This series is about finding the truth or real history behind football. So get ready for yet another football history debate. Let's have a look at the map. Where are we? Of course, we're in Sheffield, which is in northern England. Our short walk will take us from the area next to Hallamshire Golf Course, along an old Roman road called Redmyers Road. We'll pass Claremont Hospital, and then we'll find down the hill Sandygate Football Ground, home since 1804 of Hallam Cricket Club, and from 1860 also home of Hallam FC. Most people outside Sheffield know Sheffield as just Sheffield. The name Sheffield means border area or field, and in ancient Saxon times Sheffield was a fort on the border between Mercia and Northumberland. The lands around Sheffield were owned by a Saxon called Wulfioth, who was lord of the manor in these parts. If you live in Sheffield, you know Sheffield has another name, Hallam or Hallamshire, and many things within the city go by that name. Hallam FM radio station, we have Hallamshire Hospital, we have Sheffield Hallam University. Even the football association locally is known as Sheffield and Hallamshire FA. My son went to Hallam Primary School. The area of Hallamshire is on the west and northwest of the city. The area covering the Rivlin and Loxley valleys, Bradfield, and goes all the way across to Ecclesfield. The area of Sheffield on the east is now more the industrial side of the city, whereas the west is mainly in the foothills of the Pennines, and much of the city on the west is actually in the Peak District National Park. It's thought that near to where we are walking was an ancient hamlet of Hallam, as well as a manor house of the Saxon Lord Wulfioth. The exact locations are unknown, but this shows there is evidence of people living as a community in this area and having lived here for a very long time. So also in this area we find Hallam Cricket Club, which was formed at least in 1804, possibly earlier, and from Hallam Cricket Club we know in 1860 came Hallam FC. Today we need to try and answer the question, which football club formed after Sheffield FC and so became officially the second oldest football club in the world? Hallam FC claims to be this, but is it? Earlier today I went into ChatGPT and asked the question, who are the oldest football teams in the world? It told me that the oldest was Sheffield FC. It told me the second oldest was Sheffield FC. And it then told me the third oldest was Hallam. I'm not sure what to make of all that, other than it shows there is some confusion out there, and even some confusion with our so-called super AI. The game's so-called football historians on YouTube will probably tell you that Hallam is not the second oldest football club in the world at the moment. The trend is to put Hallam fourth at best, behind Cambridge University AFC and Cray Wanderers, a southern London club. We know Cambridge University actually claimed to be the oldest and first football club, but because they have no proof of this, for some strange reason, historians quite lazily just put them second without any further questions or any further scrutiny of the matter. Cray Wanderers are only placed third usually, and have the date 1860 emblazoned into their club badge because of local village tales of football kickabouts that may or may not have happened between St Mary Cray villagers and railway labourers back in the day. So let's look at those two claims in more detail. If we take Cambridge University's claim first, we've touched on this claim in previous videos, of course. They claim to have been founded in 1856. This claim is based on a one-sheet set of rules, which has the date the 9th of December on at the bottom. This sheet of rules was discovered at some point, and even though there is no year attached to these rules, and the same document doesn't state the name Cambridge University Association Football Club as the club the rules are attached to, somebody in 1956, yes, 1956, claimed that at that point Cambridge University AFC were 100 years old. They took this claim to the FA, and the FA decided, without any proper investigation, to recognise Cambridge University AFC as, from then, the oldest football club in the world. And I repeat, they did this without any investigation or any credible evidence. So, despite the credibility Cambridge University is given around the world, could there be another explanation? There are gaps in this story. Let's look a bit closer at those Cambridge University early rules. I know we discussed the early rules of the game in our last video, but we didn't take the time to study the Sheffield rules and the Cambridge rules in detail side by side. I want to do this now to offer a possible alternative narrative to the history of the game and to help demonstrate the weakness of Cambridge's claim to be a club older than both Sheffield FC and Hallam FC. The first thing to realise about these two sets of rules is they are actually remarkably similar and appear to be basically the same game. Here are the Sheffield rules. You will note that there are 11 of them. Here are the Cambridge rules. Again, 11 listed rules. Rule 1 of Sheffield's is the kick-off, and it's from the middle of the pitch. Rule 2 of Cambridge's is exactly the same, kick-off from the middle. Sheffield's rules 5 and 6 are about what today we might call physical fouling. No tripping, no holding or pulling. You can actually push. Cambridge's Rule 10 states again no holding, no tripping, no pushing. Again very similar, except you can push in Sheffield's game. Finally, the rules about handling. Sheffield's rules 3, 7 and 8 state that you can catch the ball in the air, but then you need to stop and take a free kick. You cannot pick up or hold on to the ball, but you can hit it. With Cambridge, it's the same. A catch is allowed, followed by a kick. You can stop the ball with your hands, but otherwise you cannot touch it using your hands. Apart from more pushing in the Sheffield rules, they are essentially describing the same game. The two men given most credit for the Cambridge University rules are Herbert Mortimer Luckock and E.L. Horne. Both were from Shrewsbury School prior to their time at Cambridge University. We know more of Luckock than Horne, so let's focus on him. You can see both in this Cambridge University photograph, which is claimed by the university to be around 1854. Luckock is top left and Horne is top right. This may prove both men were at Cambridge prior to 1856, but we also know that Luckock at least didn't leave Cambridge until he completed his MA in 1862. So any involvement in any meetings about Cambridge's club rules could in theory have happened right up to this date, 5 years after the formation of Sheffield FC and 2 years after Hallam. Luckock then spent the rest of his life in or near Cambridge. Dating these revised set of Cambridge football rules to 1856, the reference doesn't come from the document itself. The document only states at the bottom the date of 9th of December. There is no year. The date reference comes from a Frederick G. Sykes, who was an attendee of this meeting where it's claimed these rules were written. But Frederick G. Sykes only claimed this 41 years later in a letter he wrote in 1897. In this letter, he claims he recalls the meeting when they all met to decide on these revised Cambridge rules. Sykes mentions 1856, but in the letter goes on to indicate that this is just a recollection, a belief, and so may not actually be the actual year. We have no recorded minutes or other records of this alleged 1856 meeting. Just this letter, written, as I say, maybe 41 years later, by an unsure author. This is not exactly a first-hand at-the-time account, and certainly not evidence of the existence of any organised football club activity happening within Cambridge University at this time. I would like to offer an alternative version of history which is just as credible, but I admit still cannot be proven. We know that casual football games were being played in 1855 or even earlier by Sheffield Cricket Club members. We know this led to the formation of Sheffield Football Club and a set of rules which we know where, when, how and by whom they were produced. We know these players in Sheffield from 1855 preferred a less physical and less handling form of the game. We know Luckock was a peaceful, non-violent man. He was a man of the church who would have disliked much of the early physical football games played prior to the mid-1850s in public schools, including his own of Shrewsbury School. So, I put it to you that Luckock and his contemporaries may have been influenced by someone from Sheffield coming to Cambridge University in the mid-1850s. Influenced to the point where elements of the Sheffield game strongly influenced the Cambridge University game. If this did happen at all, we don't know by whom, when, or even how. But the evidence that there was some influence between the two sets of rules is there to conclude some connection and influence did exist and did happen at some point. This is because the rules are so similar. Because of Luckock's known association with the university up to 1862, Cambridge University may credibly claim it had an agreed code to play kickabouts with written down rules made sometime before 1862. But I don't see how any credible claims that a football club was active and even using the Cambridge University laws, I don't see how this can be substantiated properly before that point of 1862. And once formed, to what extent was the Cambridge University Club organised? Was it organised in the same way Sheffield and Hallam were organised? What influence did the Cambridge Club have on the game and spreading football into the wider community? Even now you have to be a Cambridge student to even have trials for the club. It's not open to just anybody. Also, Cambridge University AFC do not play within the English football pyramid. They play in a university and college league which does not access the English football pyramid. Sheffield and Hallam can, in theory, gain promotion to the Premier League. This is not currently possible for Cambridge University AFC. This is not the reason I don't give them credit for being the second oldest football club in the world. That's because there wasn't any evidence of that. But it does show the legacy that the club is still at best semi-elitist and not open to the wider community. And therefore you have to question what influence the club could have had even in its earliest days. Influence in terms of impacting and developing a football culture, even within its own locality, within the community of Cambridge, never mind beyond it. There is simply no proof that Cambridge University AFC was an organised entity in 1856, and no credible proof exists for many years after that. You cannot award them the title of second oldest football club. This is just because any proof is missing, it's not there. There is no evidence that they were actually around before Hallam FC, and any evidence that shows they were actively in existence with members, subscriptions, meetings, etc. prior to the formation of Hallam just is totally non-existent. So now let's look at Cray Wanderers, the other team that some people claim is older than Hallam. HITC7s on their YouTube channel do claim that there is some evidence behind what some historians say, and that is that Cray Wanderers are one of the world's oldest football clubs. Cray Wanderers themselves don't actually make that claim. There is actually nothing official on the club's website to claim they are the second or third oldest in the sport. They do, however, have founded in 1860 written on their club badge. But even the club's history section on their website doesn't claim any organised version of the club was formed in 1860, just that the club grew out of an unorganised kickabout of games played between members from the local villages and the labourers who were building a railway nearby. The first documentation of the club and the name Cray Wanderers, and this again is admitted on the club website, was actually as late as 1887. If the club's website and the club itself isn't making any strong claims to be one of the oldest football clubs in the world, then I've got no idea why anybody else would believe this. Based on what evidence we know, I also have no idea why the club persists in stating that its foundation year was 1860. It is, of course, highly feasible that labourers may have come from all over the country spreading knowledge of the ever-growing popular rules, various rules in fact, of playing football. And yes, again, of course, it's feasible that matches did take place between the labourers and the local villagers. Why not? But again, even if actual evidence did exist proving these unofficial kickabouts happened, there is no evidence to suggest that an organised club playing to a set of rules with members paying subscriptions, governed by a committee, organising matches, etc., came from these kickabouts. Again, anything organised would surely have had some form of documented evidence that we may still be able to see today. The inspiration from the labourers may have actually led to developments of football and developments of football being played in that part of South London. And of course, eventually to the development of an organised football club in that area. But there is no evidence that this club formed in 1860. So this claim cannot, of course, also be held up. If stories of kickabouts is all you need to prove a club existed, then you might as well claim that Sheffield Cricket Club was also an organised football club, because they played unofficial kickabout games as early as the winter of 1855. It does actually make sense to me that the next organised club to form after Sheffield FC would actually come from the locality in which Sheffield FC existed, and that same locality where the game was being popularised. And of course, this did actually happen. Hallam is just 3 to 4 miles from the B&Q car park on Queen's Road, where the East Bank ground is. Some of Hallam's club members founded and played for Sheffield FC. It also had a need for winter fitness at the Hallam Cricket Club, and members also played football games prior to 1860 to keep fit when not playing cricket. It's no accident that with a need for local competition, Hallam was created, and a match organised to play Sheffield FC, a match that FIFA recognises as the first between two actual organised football clubs, took place. This is all well documented, and it does make Hallam officially the second oldest football club in the world. So as you can see, here we are actually at Hallam FC. Sheffield City Library has copies of all local newspapers since the 1850s, and as such we know a lot about the history of football in Sheffield. It's all been well documented. The key creators of Hallam FC were Captain Tom Vickers and, more significantly, John Charles Shaw. Among Shaw's Sheffield Collegiate College school friends were Tom Vickers and Nathaniel Creswick. All were also 3 founding members of Sheffield FC. Significantly at this point, it's worth mentioning that Shaw, his college tutors and his ex-grammar school headmaster were all Cambridge graduates. As we've said, there were reports of unofficial kickabouts to keep fit in the winter months at Hallam Cricket Club, and it made sense for the club, out of its 300-strong membership, to create a football club to compete with Sheffield FC. So on the 28th of December 1860, Sheffield played Hallam. And this became, as I said, the first match between 2 association football clubs. For the record, Sheffield won 2-0. And this game, of course, is also recognised as the game's oldest derby. Hallam, unlike Sheffield FC, have always been at Sandygate. That makes this ground the oldest in the world, officially. In December 1862, the 2 clubs met at Bramall Lane to play a charity game. This match turned Bramall Lane into the oldest football stadium in the world. In 1867, also at Bramall Lane, Hallam beat Norfolk to lift the Oden Cup. This is the world's very first association football tournament trophy. We could just make a video about John Shaw alone, who had many footballing achievements, including being president of Sheffield FA, when it had clubs affiliated to it as far away as Birmingham and Teesside. And alongside the English FA, the Sheffield FA was a major influence on the early game, especially across the north of England. So Hallam is the world's 2nd oldest football club, and they can claim many other oldests and firsts. And these are undisputed and well documented. Rival claims for the title as the 2nd oldest are once again weak, largely unsubstantiated, lacking the broad collection of evidence that clubs like Hallam have. This is why you find bodies like FIFA and the Guinness Book of Records, credible institutions, backing their footballing credentials. If you know any different, of course, you know where to leave your comments. So, in the next video, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about other early Sheffield clubs that started from 1861 onwards, as well as more about the founders of Sheffield FC, who of course influenced the development of some of these clubs and the early development of football in the Sheffield area. Till next time.